Why, hello there. Welcome to Creative Crusade, my ongoing art journey.
If you want to follow me and stay up to date with me and learn alongside me, yeah,
You can do so by subscribing and hitting the bell so you can...
All right, lads, let's get this started, shall we? So, as always, you should have watched Drawabox's content on this lesson. This is lesson 7, by the way. And this is the boss level. I highly suggest, if you haven't already, to go and watch Uncomfortable stuff on this because this is a very difficult lesson to do. Uncomfortable's resources are the best resources. I'm just another resource. That said, let's draw this military jeep. So, as always, we're going to start out by blocking it, and we're going to do one block. We're just going to put it in one box in perspective. One box that encapsulates everything. I'm going to exclude the machine gun just because that's kind of a separate object that's sticking out. You could include that in that box if you wanted to. I'm not going to include it in that box because I'm just going to add that on afterwards. So first, just going to draw a box, like I just said. So I'm going to establish my perspective here. It's not going to be too different from the perspective of the image. It'll be a little bit more upward, I suppose, just so you can actually kind of see the top of the hood. So maybe I want it to be, let's see here. Maybe I'll also make it a little more extreme so it's like the Jeep's kind of a lot closer. So in order to do that, I'll just bring this forward and this back in space. And it's a relatively square vehicle. It's a little bit longer than a square, perhaps about there. And I'm going to be using a ruler because it's much easier and it's allowed with this lesson. So, yada. It's been a while since I've made one of these videos, hasn't it? I do apologize for that, but I had some family over and I didn't really feel like doing these videos with them. Probably out of embarrassment, but that's not the excuse I'll give. Alright, so that seems pretty decent. I think it might be a little bit long regarding the perspective, so I might chop this off a little bit. Actually, let's go ahead and get the full context of the box first before I chop anything off. So looking at this Jeep here, I can see that the windshield takes up about a third. If again, we have this object encapsulated in a box, it'd be about a third of to the top of the box is where that windshield starts. And so I'm going to use that kind of as a reference point to kind of measure out how tall my box should be. And it looks pretty tall, probably about, is that good? I'll probably bring it up a little bit more, making the perspective not too extreme, but extreme enough to make it cool. You know, cool. So I'm going to finish the box like I said I would. Again, using that technique from the 250 box challenge to just kind of mark my point along there. Finding that vanishing point, just probably around there-ish somewhere. A little bit out more. That seems pretty good. And finish off that last corner of the new order. The corner. This might be off, that's okay though. Like, that feels right. One thing I like to do if it gets too complicated like this is I can just kind of draw out this point a little bit more just so I know it's a little bit more accurate. Let's see. Does this align to that? Aligns to that pretty good. So it's pretty close to this point. So let's see if that's... So this point is a little bit off, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Just something that you can do to be a little bit more precise if you need be. Alright, now I can say alright. And just ignore that line because that's a mistake. So let's see here. I'm gonna look at this image and imagine encapsulating that Jeep in here. So with this perspective in context, the front of the Jeep looks a little bit too big, or too wide, I should say, and the back looks a little bit too narrow. So I can either stick with that, which I think I might, just because it gives it a much more extreme perspective. But it also may, if it is too distorted, then it can it can make the Jeep look really big and long, or really long, and it can be too distorted. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to trim off a little bit of this box here. Just maybe about that much, probably. It's probably good. doing this is just gonna make that perspective a little bit more accurate and closer to what it should be and look a little bit more realistic. Real stick. A real stick, okay? It's a real stick. It is. I promise you. And when you correct stuff like this, things get really messy. This perspective still looks good. So essentially we're just cutting this piece off right here. And that's our box. Now from this point, I'm going to identify again that the windshield, and which was about 1/3 of the box. So I can just guess, okay, how much is 1/3 on here? So if I take this line, cut it into thirds, like about there. So I'm just going to draw a line all the way around the box that represents that line where that windshield is. That windshield, you know what I'm saying? I think that's right. Just going to roll with it. Roll with it, my dude. Roll with it. Roll with me. Think that's right. It looks pretty good, Jeeves. But is it really? Let us see. It's pretty darn close. Gosh dang. It's close. Alright, so this top, it looks a little short, but that's okay. You can either fix that, make it longer, or push it down if you wished it, or you can just deal with it like me, because I have to deal with a lot of things. The windshield actually is a pretty significant piece of that, of the Jeep, so I'm gonna, actually, I'll just say this part I made wasn't quite 1/3, looks more like 1/4. And I can just say that's the bottom of the glass part of the windshield, and I can extend it out a little bit more and just say that's the metal part. And that way it looks like that's what I meant to do, when really I just made a mistake, right? Right, guys? Yeah, except my pen isn't good, so that's not cool. And this lesson, even more so than the last one, gets really, really clouded with lines. And that's why it's so important to line weight your stuff at the end and fill stuff in so you can actually identify what's going on. Alright, so here's my glass part of the windshield. I might actually bring this line up later. And here's the bottom part of my windshield. So now I can look at my reference again, and I can see that the Jeep part, I guess the body, and the bumper included, goes to about right there. So it's a little more than 1/3, probably about here. So I'm just going to take that, and just like with the windshield, draw a line all the way around. I'm essentially just, or I am just dividing my box into the correct primitive forms that I need. So now I have my divisions, my very basic divisions of the body here, the windshield, and I guess the rest of what's there, which would be, I guess, the tires. So now we can move on to blocking in within the block. Blockception, guys. All right, now let's move on to blocking out the tires, I guess. Yeah, so let's get to the frame first. Then we'll do the tires, and we can block out the windshield as well. So for the frame, which we've decided is going to be in this middle, and looking at our reference, I can tell that the main body of the Jeep is actually thinner than the whole box, because you can see that the wheel wells kind of come out a little bit. So I'm going to adjust for that, measure in how far I think those go in, and you can also see how not including the bumper, it kind of tapers down at the front there. So we'll also find a spot for that as well. So first, let's find how the actual width of the body. So it looks like it's not super thick, so it's probably, I'm just going to kind of make a guess here. It's probably around here. So I'll take this, and I'm going to find that same width on the other side of this by cross-dividing. So I'll take my box and just find the exact center of it by drawing the corners together. Now I'll take this line I made just a second ago and pull it through the middle. I can do it to both sides, and that'll should give me a perfect spot. It may not if I messed up, but it looks pretty close. So we can just, so now I know the body of the Jeep is going to be to the left of this line and to the right of that line. So let's also find. Alright, so now the front part of the Jeep looks like it goes about halfway. It's kind of hard to tell when the picture is in perspective. So let's go about halfway, and if we want to be really precise, which we should try to be, we should find the exact center of our side plane so we can get somewhere nearby that center, so we're not going to be super distorted. So I'm going to actually pull it forward a little bit from center, so like probably about there. It seems reasonable. So from this point inward or towards us, that's where the front of my Jeep ends. And I'm going to also find that on the back plane back here, which I can do that by doing this, just following that perspective through the bottom plane, following that perspective of these lines that are going towards that vanishing point. Take this to the top, and then connect the two, and they should be correct. If they're not, well, then they're not correct. So now I know that the very basic shape, the box shape of this, and there's one more thing we can do. We can find, so this goes along here. Can pull this through all the way to the back to find that equal width to that point, all the way through. And it starts to get really confusing once you're adding all these lines everywhere. If you can't tell that I'm already confused. So now if you can kind of see this line here to this line here, this line here. Now I can connect where we said the front of the body of the Jeep is going to go back in space to here. I can take this where it's on this plane, take that spot right there. So now I know that the box of my Jeep goes from here to here to there to there. That's the bottom plane. The top plane is, well, we haven't found it yet. So the way we can find that is the same way of what we just did here on the bottom, just to the top. Just got to find the right line. It's this one. I think that's right. I'll take the point where they're intersecting right there. But if you have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, don't worry about it. Just practice it more. And watch Uncomfortable's videos, because he explains it a lot better. And the more you do it, the more it starts to make sense, as with most things. Through all these lines, if you can tell it. Here's the front plane, here's the side plane, which ends on this line. The top plane is, the side plane ends on right here. All right, so here's the side plane, it goes to here, to that. No, that's too high. To that. And this comes over. What the frick, dude? I'm so lost right now. Okay, so there's our intersection, and that should meet up with that intersection. Now, after I added another line to the mess, our box is within this. That's what I'm trying to get to. All right, so now let's get that taper on the front of the Jeep. And we can tell that the taper starts not at the very top, but like about maybe a fourth of the way down. So we can say, okay, a fourth of the way down is probably about here. I can just find that on the other side to be somewhere about there. Weak line. Right there, okay. And so from these 2 points down, they're gonna go to some point in here. So let's see if the angle of that taper doesn't look super extreme, so it's probably something like, and now I want my angles to be consistent on both sides within perspective. So to do that, I'm just gonna take this plane here that I just created, find the center of it. When you turn the page and stuff, it starts to get really confusing. So often what I find it helps with this exercise, don't turn the page as much or make marks on stuff before you turn it, because then you're just gonna lose it and waste time. Here's our center right there. So if I take this point, pull it through the center, or rather I can just do this, find the top of where this is gonna be, which is up here, and just pull this top line through, which will show me where the bottom line is, which is what I want. I don't care about the top line, really. All I need is just the bottom one, so that's all I'm gonna go for. Save me some time. All right, here's my other point in perspective. So now I can take this point to that point, this point to that point, and now I have my tapered shape of the engine block, or not the engine block, but the engine front chassis thing. I'm not a mechanic, if you can tell. All right, so since this is a little bit, so we can see the sides of the Jeep as well are like it's not, it's got that curved edge there. So the way we're gonna get around that is some more fun. So we'll go ahead and we're gonna take that top point. So right now we just have a block, and we're gonna shave off, we're gonna define a curve in there to curve, I guess. So to do that, I'm gonna decide how long I want my curve to be. And looking at the Jeep, it doesn't look like it's too much, but there is a slight bevel all the way across. So if we really want to be really precise about that, which again, it's good to be, we can see that the curve right about, it's like about a pretty square curve there. So I'm just gonna say like right here, that's about when it starts to even out. So now to find that in perspective, again, we're gonna find the center of this plane, adding more lines, making everything more confusing. Any plane, as long as the top is that part, will work. So now I can take this, pull it there, find the perspective in the right upwards position, there. All right, so now I have my perspective, or my correct point in perspective. I can create a curve between these two, and I'm going to add a couple more dots in here to define my curve a little bit better. So it's going to follow to those, and I can freehand that a little easier. Or if you have an ellipse guide or French curves, you don't need that really. But actually we can find these points on the other side. And the way to do that, so to find where it is on this axis or on that vanishing point, simply you can just draw a vanishing point to there, or through this line towards the vanishing point. And same with this one here. So now we know along that vanishing point where that point will be on the other side. The way we can find the whatever of the other side is we can pull this, so we can draw a vertical line through here, line across that across this plane, and we can use the center of this plane, which I've already drawn, and pull it through, take that point and pull it down along this vanishing point. And now I know that that this point is going to be along this line and along this line. So that means it can only end up right here. And we can do the same thing with this one. Find the center, or draw a line through it and then find the center. So now I have a correct points within perspective that are essentially perfectly mirrored. Now I can draw that curve. So that goes through these points like that. So now I have a correct, consistent curve that follows this. And now since the Jeep has a very, very slight bevel, I'm just going to ignore that because it's so small. At this scale, it's not going to really be even noticeable. Plus, it'd be really difficult to freehand that. I could use this, I guess, but that wouldn't make it a nice bevel. But again, it's such a small detail that's barely even noticeable, if it even, like, it's worth doing, but because it's such a small detail, I'm just gonna pass over that. I'm just gonna draw a straight line through these so I can reinforce this. All right, so here's the very front of my Jeep. I can also go down to here. I'm not gonna reinforce these lines because things are in front of them and I don't want too much line weight to be placed before it's ready. All right, so now I can find the back side of the Jeep. or rather the back side of this engine thing. We can do the same bevel curve things there. And we only have to curve one side because you can only see one side. So here's the top of my box. So I'm going to find this line, which is the bottom of the curve there, and just pull that through all the way back to here. So now I know my bottom curve point's right there. Do the same with my top curve point. And for these curve points, I can do the same thing, but it's a little bit more confusing. Another way you can do it is just kind of an educated guess, which I'm going to try to do that here. This one's going to be like there-ish. That one's going to be like there-ish. If you want to be much more precise, which you should be, go ahead and do what we did over here to get that perfect same points. So this doesn't quite look right, so I'm going to bring this point. All right, now let's do the wheel well here. So the wheel well starts at the bottom of this bevel, or this curve that we just created, and it's pretty thin, so I can say it goes like there. And it only goes back to about 3/4 of the way of the entire front of the engine. We can again, to be precious, find the center of this plane of the engine. This is the full plane, not the beveled one. All right, so here's my center, so I can find the exact fourth if I wish, which I'll do right now. Where I can just basically subdivide this again, and that finds the center of the right spot. So I draw a line through the center. Here's my fourth piece. Here's my third piece. So I know this Jeep thing goes all the way to the third, which is going to be this middle line here. And it's going from here, right? Yeah, from this to this. And it's going to come out. We'll just go ahead and extend it the full width so it takes up the entire encapsulating box that we drew first. That may not be super accurate, but that's okay. It also looks like the Jeep has a curve to the wheel well as well. So that's going to be fun. So it's going to come out to this. So I'm going to draw a line from here through over so I know where. So when I try to pull out this line, I have something to intersect so I know when to stop. So now I can define the width or the height of this. I'm going to piggyback off this line that's already here and just use that one. So this is my bottom, just say that and take it on out. Because it seems pretty close to the right size. And I don't have to add another line, so that's cool. So now I have a square thing. And I can curve this the same way we did that, just the top plane. So say the curve goes all the way out to here. Make a box top plane within this thing that's impossible to see. All right, now I can also do that to the bottom and define my curve within this. So let's say it goes like, and again, I'm guessing these bottom points, just like we did back there. This goes all the way to, I went too far. So it goes to this one. All right, so now let's get the bumper in. So the bumper goes to, it looks like it extends out more. So we can just extrude our box out with another box. It looks like it encapsulates almost the full width of the box. I'd probably like to here, say like half of this width. So I'm just gonna do this, find my center point, it's right there, go through it. So I know this line and that line are where my bumper will stop. And so the bumper looks like it's on this. So we'll just say it's about yay high, pull a line through that. Say it goes back in space, or forward in space because we're extruding it out. Say about this much. Just because this is such a small little bumper, I'm kind of freehanding this. Or I am freehanding it, not kinda. Because it's a lot less easy to make a mistake on this one. Just because it's a much smaller detail. But you can still make mistakes, so if you don't feel comfortable freehanding it, don't. But use your tools. You don't have to be super precise with everything. It's just you'll have a obviously more precise thing if you do, or if you are more precise, obviously. Looks like I made that a little bit tapered for some reason. I don't know how I did that. Just not being careful, so I'll just do that. Alright, so there's my blocked bumper, and that is tapered, or it's got a slight curve to it. For something like this, I would just kind of estimate that curve around in perspective if you're comfortable doing that. Otherwise, you can do what we did here, but just on a larger scale. So let's get the tires in, because this video is running on very, very long. So the tires are turned, but I'm just going to draw them straight on because it's easier. Essentially, just to draw a curved tire, you'd have another perspective that I don't really want to deal with right now. But you just basically have another box that's going to different vanishing points. So I'm just going to not have that. And the tire looks like there's about, I don't know, this much space in between the wheel well. So we'll say the top's like right there. And we want this to be a perfect circle, so it's going to have to be a perfect square within the space. And that's hard to do in perspective. So you just kind of got to judge your best on what a square in this perspective is going to be. You can kind of tell, though, with intuition. It's like that's too skinny. That's too long. Too skinny. Too long. It's probably something like about there. I'm just drawing this to the side plane of the encapsulating box because the wheel comes all the way out, it looks like, or it's going to in this one. So let's see if this looks right. That looks a little bit skinny, so let's go a little bit further out, say about that much. All right, that looks a little better. Let's just roll with that. I get it, because it's the tire. All right, we'll just say the tire is about as thick as the wheel well thing. So it goes to there. Let's find that back point. It's just going to go back in space to about there. So we're piggybacking. We can piggyback off this line here. Find the bottom plane. Find the side plane. Connect them. Alright, so now we have a square in which we can put a sphere in, or not a sphere, a cylinder. Or no, an ellipse. We're drawing an ellipse that's encapsulating this box. If you have an ellipse guide, which I do not, because I am an unprivileged peasant, I'm just going to have to freehand this. So that's going to be terrible. It's best if you have an ellipse guide. But if you don't, all you can do is try to freehand it. So, wish me luck. Heck, let's actually do some warm-ups first, just to be safe. All right, wish me luck. I'm going in. Be sure to ghost a lot. Unlike me right there. All right, let's get the back side now. All right, what a fantastic wheel. Yeah. Okay. So let's find the other side of the wheel, which we can do by taking this bottom corner of the wheel and just projecting it to the other side. Same with the top, if I can even find it. It's all this big mess. All right, so the back of the wheel goes to here. Now, how far over does it go? Let's find that by following this line. Goes to here. Okay. Let's draw a line all the way back from that dot to that one. Wait, no, wrong one. And now I'm lost. Which dot is it? From here to there, and from there to up here, about. Let's find the front of the tar. I think this line is off. Okay, so my perspective is whack right now. So this tire is going to be super long, and to battle that, wait, no, it's not. So it's supposed to go to about there, and then up. From that one to this one. Oh my gosh, this is so confusing. I don't know. And that looks much better. Okay, so here's my box in there. Kind of hard to see, but I'm just going to fill it in with that ellipse. Ghosting, make sure to ghost a whole lot. All right. So those are my ellipse sides of the wheels. And this is just like the 25 wheel challenge, I think. You can treat it that way if you want to go into super detail into that. But that challenge it's a pretty good challenge to do. It's tough, but you learn a lot from it. So if you haven't done that challenge, I would suggest, maybe not right now, but at some point in the future, it's a good challenge to check out. So as we can tell with tires, they're full of air, so they kind of bulge a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of a bulge here, just a little bit though. Same over here. And I'm just going to try to draw the best wheel I can with what I got here. Looks like it's got a flat tire. That wasn't even... Okay. Now that's what I call a bulge. Something like that. Of course, we can get the rim in here. You know, it's really messy without an ellipse guide, but it's the best. Okay, it's the best I can do. Okay, that one's gonna be a little whack. It's not a very round tire. I'm kind of flattening out the bottom of these tires, just because, I mean, in the reference, the ground is pretty soft, so they're sinking into the ground a little bit. So now I can embolden this bumper. All right, so there's the front tires. We can get the back ones in now if we wish it. And you know it, we wish it. So there's two ways we can do this. One, we can guarantee that our tire will be the same consistent size all the way back. And the other way is just guessing. I'll show you how to do the guaranteed consistency size. Essentially, you're just taking this box we have here, and you're just gonna project it back into space by... Okay, so we can take the middle line of this and project essentially half of this. So we'll take the bottom left part of this and bring it to, if we also cut through the middle here. So we're finding the center of both vertical and horizontal. So we're taking this middle line in the direction that we want to project it back in space that way. So we're going to take this point right here and put it through that point right there, which is the right middle piece of the thing. And we're just going to project that out until it intersects with this line here. So if we continue this line out all the way to the back, we take this, converge it through that, and it connects right there. It's going to go there. So now we have half of this right there. And we can essentially do that again, because we still have this middle line. If we bring that all the way to the back here, we can take that and do it again on this piece, or the left piece of this, and run it through that line again until it hits the top of this. And you can just repeat forever until you have the desired amount of space away. So I'm just going to continue this on through this line. And this is really easy to mess up too. Like if you're just off by a slight degree, it can be incorrect proportions. So that's just something to be careful about, like specifically careful about this. Try to be precise on this when you do it. Don't do it quickly, just to save time, because more than likely you're going to make a mistake that's going to be harder to find out why, which is probably what I did, because it's getting... It should do that though, because it's going back in perspective. So the tire goes all the way back to here. So it's going to be these two, because remember we divided it and found a half of that. And so two of those circle or squares are going to be our tire, or a square, because we took a square and cut it in half and then projected that out. So we're going to need two of those projections to have the right correct measurement. And so we just project this out, which we didn't do yet. Like there. This comes out to here. This goes down to that. And this should project straight to that, which it's pretty close. So there's our tire, which we can piggyback off this line here already. All right, now we have that square back there in space, and we just round that off. And we can just put a couple of ellipses in there. Make sure it's in the right one. There you go, there's our back tire. All right, and so we cannot see the entirety of this wheel, so I'm not gonna finish that off yet, just because you can see the back of it, or you can see the back of the Jeep in front of it. So that's how you do the wheels part, and this is still really messy, but at the end of the video it should clear up a lot more. Once I do the line weights, you should be able to see everything much clearer. And I can already tell right now that this Jeep is wider than it should be compared to the reference image, and that's just kind of something that's you're going to have to work on. And I do that every time I do this. It's almost always off, and just because I haven't done it enough. But you will notice that it may be inaccurate in proportions as you flesh it out. And I'd suggest just going through with it and completing it anyway, because there's other skills in this that you're still learning. That specific skill of just getting the right proportions is a separate skill on its own, that if you really want to master that, go ahead and just practice just that by doing basic shapes instead of going into this much detail. So next, let's get the windshield on here. And then we can tell the windshield has a slight slant. So the way around that is I'll show you. So we're going to say the windshield starts right here, and it goes across there. All right, so there's our windshield. So now we need, no, there's the little metal part right there too. I'm actually going to bring that up a little bit to say like right there, just because, well, yeah, we'll just leave it. So, right, so the slant. So here we have a perfect vertical plumb line. So we want it to slant a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, so I'll take this forward a little bit because it's a slight amount of width, almost the exact same line because they're just so close to each other. Another thing about this corner here, where it curves, we're going to continue the line right where you can see the curve end right there. We're not going to continue it on the construction box, if that makes sense, because the whole surface of it is curved, so you're not going to see that piece right there. So we're going to take it to here and make sure we're also not going to connect it to the back side of that piece, because again, you can't see that part. So it's going to be like, if we project a line out from here, it'll be to like right there, which is a little hard to see right now, but I'll clean that up later. So we have a vertical thing like this now. So what I'm going to do to slant it is I'm just going to take these 2 points and shift them back a little bit. And remember that we're in perspective. So it's kind of an intuition thing that you have to keep in. It has to look right to you. Otherwise, you could do some really complex subdividing things to figure out that exact width all the way back if you wanted to. But that seems like a lot of work for a really small detail. So I'm just going to guess it. So I'm going to push this back. Where is it? Right there. Push this one back to, say, where that one is, and push this one back to, like, right there. So we can slant this a little bit now. So it's a very, very small slant. Barely even noticeable. But it is there, and it's good to pick up on those details because it shows that you care. All right, so now we can see that the window itself has a little border before the glass hits. So we're going to have to find that border on this plane. And it being tilted doesn't matter at all because we're still using these perspective tools. So we can say it's a piece about that wide. We can subdivide this whole thing. So many lines. Too many to count. Too many to bear. Bah. Alright, so now let's find where this point goes to. Huh? Yes. Most exquisite. Alright, so that's our bevels. And the top can be about the same width. I'm just going to guess it. Say about there. It's a little bit off, so I'm going to fix that. It's a little better. And we can also see there is a cross support beam in the middle. So we have our center right here, so we can just either, again, be super accurate for a small detail or guess it. And you know me, so we're going to guess it. All right, so now we can see the bottom of this goes to about there. So there's going to be a metal beam thing right there. Not necessarily a beam, but... All right, so now we have our thing. So let's go ahead and we can reinforce this because it doesn't have anything in front of it. It itself is what's in front. And the corners in the picture are a little bit softer. Like they're not razor sharp like that. So you can just kind of round this off if you want, just to make them a little bit more closer to the reference. All right, so now the bottom plate. So now there's also, you can see a little like kind of indent all around that border. Let's just ignore that for now. It's more of a smaller detail. But now you can see it's really starting to come together. It's starting to look more like an old Jeep. A rather wide Jeep, but an old one. Now it's time for the final stretch to finish off this Jeep. Let's add the back of the Jeep. So we can see the Jeep, or the back of the Jeep goes behind the wheel a little bit. So we can actually extrude our box out a little as well. So maybe bring it out like a little bit, like that much. And that'll go up to be even with all this. So we're just gonna follow that line to there. Because we extruded it out a tad bit. And so the front, the ends on the inside of the wheel right about here. The wheel well, and it comes forward a little bit, so like right there. And there's also gonna be an arc between that, so I'm just gonna kind of try to mark out some of my points for where I think this arc is gonna go, and then just try to connect those, just like in the branches exercise. You can also see the back of the wheel well, goes behind it a little bit, so it'll go down. So, the Jeep thingamabob comes to about here, and then there's a little crossbar, there's something that you can hold on to that goes up a little bit higher. So I'm gonna change this to down here, bring this in to about just past the wheel. I'm just keeping it square for now, and we can add that curve in either right now or later. Let's get this other part in first. It's down, and it's got a slight angle on it, but that might be a back angle. It's still an angle though. That's again some minor details, so we probably just ignore it. Not the best advice, but curve this off. And again in here, it's a small curve right there. And because this has some width to it, you could either copy all these lines over, just a little bit over, or you can kind of fudge it, which you know me, I'm a fudge boy, to kind of give it that thickness, you know what I'm saying? Everybody. So this needs to curve too, something like that. The back is still pretty whatever it is. Alright, so now let's add that. Let's make sure it goes all the way back. Well, we should prioritize the things that are in front first, because that way you add those first, because they're the front foremost elements, and they don't. Because if you add stuff behind it and then add stuff in front of it, it can get really messy. But if you want to do it that way, it works. It's just messier lines. Let's get the seat in next, because that's the next thing that's going to be in the way of the back. And the seat just is sitting in here someplace. I'm not going to go super detailed into it, just because using the reference image, we can get a pretty good idea of where it's going to be. The seat's like right there. It goes up to about way below that. So we'll just say it goes to here. And you can see let's bring it out to bring the seat out to behind the windshield, someplace right there. Just go down, and it's got a curve to it, and it also has thickness as well. Add another line behind it, which is that thickness of the seat. Something like that. And it's got two pieces. We can add in that second one if we need it, which we do. And a lot of this is going to be really hard to see until I reinforce the lines later on, because it's just so hard to see. There's so many lines. But I'm just going to kind of deal with that. So we'll just take my word for it that the seat is there. And I can already tell the seat's going to be way too tiny, because it looks like we could fit like 3 or 4 more seats within this, because the car's so wide. Because that's an issue we had with the perspective. So now let's add the back shape, which is this bar here. So this bar just attaches onto these at 2 points, like somewhere here and here. Of course, I need to make sure I actually follow the vanishing point lines. And the bars, I'm just gonna add a cube in here. I'm essentially just adding on a cube onto this construction square cube already that's here. And I'm gonna give it width as well, just like with the seat, and then we can divide it up later. It's just you want to increase, or you want to draw the encapsulating thing first, and then go into more detail later on. Alright, and then you can just have cylinder there and there, and then you just divide those two. Now you got your bars. Alright, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail back there. I'll show you how to do a few details, but I'm not going to do everything just because the details take a lot of time. The most important detail, of course, is that 50 caliber machine gun, so let's add in that, because it's the coolest. Oh, and the steering wheel, you kind of need that to drive the car. Since the steering wheel is an ellipse that's slanted in some other perspective, I'm just going to kind of guess it. Of course, it's an educated guess, looking at our reference image. I can say that that's much too big, but that's where it is. Now let's fix that. Let's bring it down more, because whoever's driving this is going to have to be really, really tall. Something like that. And then we'll just, remembering it has a thickness to it. Something like that. Maybe you can see the edge of it. Anyway. Alright, so the 50 caliber machine gun, most important thing. Looks like it's mounted right in the middle. So we can, if we really wish it, find the exact center, which we know it's along this. I'm guessing this here, by the way. We'll say it's like right about there. That seems to be alright, so we'll just draw a line up from that. And this is our base of the 50 cal. It looks like it's pretty low down, so I'm just gonna put a box here. Actually should stop right there behind the windshield because you can't see it right there. And then finish off that box. Making sure you draw through. We can just pretend that's the back of it. And then we're gonna throw an ellipse in here. So there's our cylinder base. And it looks like it has like two little fork things on either side. So again, we can add a box. And then I'm just gonna draw another box. So this is the mounting piece, this box here. And there's another box that's right on top of it, which looks like it's a little bit slanted. Which I suggest just sticking with basic stuff, not necessarily slanted. Like I would, if you want to be very precise, draw a box and then slant it after. That way it's always consistent. I'm just kind of, this video is very long, and so I'm trying to cut back on some time and hopefully not quality. So this machine gun looks like it extends back. So I'm just gonna extend these back, decide where I want it to end, probably about there. So there's our box base, and it also got a big old magazine thing, ammo thing, dump, blah blah blah. So throw that on here as well, and that's at an angle. This is like a really big machine gun. You gotta make sure to catch yourself when you're making mistakes on the fly. And it goes from there someplace. And then we can add the barrel, which for that we can just do a cylinder, which you just identify your point of where the barrel is coming out, and you can just find the minor axis of that. Decide how long you want your barrel to be, all the way up here. Looks like a pretty short barrel, but who doesn't want a big awesome barrel on their gun? So we're just gonna bring it up here and then draw that big barrel. Oh yeah, a true 50 cal with an extended barrel. It looks like the perspective might be off a little on this ellipse. I'm gonna widen it. A little better. And it looks like we have all the basic forms we need, except for maybe a couple details on the Jeep itself. Like there's a shovel on the side here. And basically at this point, you just start carving out and extruding pieces of your stuff. So like this, the wheel well, it sticks out a little bit here, like which I did make it do there. So something's wrong here. This continues in, there is no middle. You're just gonna see all that's gonna be black. So I can take my brush pen, and this is kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but just kind of fill that in to show that it's shaded in there, and that the wheel well is dark. So this sticks out to about here, and then it cuts in. So to convey that properly, I can make this stick out more. I can extrude it out by having this go down. It goes to there and then cuts back in. So it's like the little foothold or whatever this is. And then that way there's a little bit of a piece added on. It's very difficult to see with all these lines, but let's go ahead and add the details in the front because the back is just getting, I can't see anything. I'm just gonna add, let's see here. I'll deck out the machine gun and I'll add stuff on the front. And that should give you a solid enough foundation on how to add details. For the inside of this, we got the headlights, which go right there and there. So we can use what we already used to define these curves. That box, we can say the cylinders are gonna go inside there someplace. Actually, I want them to be a little bit bigger so what we can see that this square, that this is its basic form is in. We can find the center of that. So I want my headlights to be quite large. So let's say they stick out to about there within this box. And just like before, we can find the proper division within our space, perspective, go into there, we know it's right here. Alright, so now I know my headlights are going to be within this 2 spots. And we can go even more detailed and find the bottom of this to make a perfect square, and then throw a cylinder inside of that, or we can just freehand it. I think I'll just kind of try to do the best of both and estimate. We'll draw a cylinder within this, and within this, wherever the bottom was. Again, if you have an ellipse guide, use it, because otherwise you end up with these awful things that you hope can be an ellipse. And they are also indented, so we can go back, we can pull this square back in space, or extrude within this, and then we can find another plane within to draw the cylinder. I'm getting a little messy here. I'm just gonna guess on this one. Good enough. So that's where we got the headlights in. So we can use the subdivision thing to equally subdivide this plane in here to get equal widths for our radiator slots. Essentially just subdivide forever. It's basically what this lesson's all about, subdivision. Oh wait, it should be that one, okay. So then we draw a line through that. That's our center point. We can subdivide these two again. So on and so forth, just subdivide forever. Looks like it matches it pretty well right there. And I think if we subdivide it one more, it should be the right size, a good size anyway. Make sure we're actually accurate before we draw those lines. Alright, so now we have our evenly spaced. It's not necessarily the same amount as that. If you wanted to do that, you could be more precise. The way you do that actually is you just count how many there are. So I think it's 10. You just subdivide this enough. So we can trim off a little bit of space in the sides here. Trim off the sides actually first. If you want to be super precise, you can just do a lot more measuring. This isn't going to be super accurate because I'm getting lazier as this lesson progresses, just because there's more time invested. So now we can just curve off the top and bottom, reinforce these lines, and then repeat it all the way down. And this isn't, like, if you wanted to be much more precise, like I keep saying, you can do it way more precise than this. I'm just getting lazy. Fill those in, shade them, do whatever. Looks like the top of the Jeep has a little bit of a lip as well, which I didn't notice until too late. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll just pretend that this is the lip here. I'm just gonna cut off the top of those because you can't see them. So this is super whack now. So let's finish off the gun, and then we'll line weight it up and then call it quits. So the ammo box should be relatively simple. It's just got this little line thing, goes back here, this goes down to like there. We can get that width as well. And it comes back to the edge and then it wraps around it. And to show that it has a little bit of that width, we can shove it over the side like that. The silhouette really sells it. It's like got a weird angle to it. So this actually comes into like right here. And this is just like a strap thing. Some really basic details. Let's add those lines here. Alright, that was terrible. The barrel, which isn't quite this big, gets smaller at the very end. There's also a ton of little holes for heating and stuff, which I don't really want to be super precise about because that's a lot of work, you know. So I'm just gonna kind of try to guess it. I like to do halving first. So you start halfway and then cut halfway, 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 so on and so forth. Yeah, actually that's not right within perspective. Closer and closer together as it goes. This is probably the laziest I've ever been in. Okay, that's terrible. But we'll just pretend it's amazing. And then the little holder thing, we'll just pretend that's cool too. Something like that. Alright, so that's how you do some basic details. For little things like something like the mirrors, those you do just like we were doing with this, you just add on a basic shape and then carve it out. Something like the decals, like the numbers and stuff, I guess that's pretty much as simple as just as writing them on there. So that's a pretty basic way. This lesson's super long. So I liked at the end of everything to add a shadow, and I think Uncomfortable suggests you do this as well. But also I like to, and I also go into detail on the wheels and stuff, but there's a whole, I made a video about the 25 wheel challenge, which would just go into way more detail for that, if you want to be super precise, which I've never really liked being super technical. I'm much more of an organic artist, probably because it's just very tedious. So I'm going to kind of map out my shading area. It's going to be something like that. And then just basically fill it all in with the brush pen. Because I've made this little outline that I'm just gonna fill in. And I like to go to the edge first, just so I can make sure I get that clean, or as I mess up, get that out of the way so I'm not gonna accidentally mess it up later. Went over into the wheel. That's okay. He's okay. Alright, so there's the cast shadow. Now I'm going to fill in these things because they're very dark, and also the lights. Also in here, it's kind of like the dark area with the bumper and stuff. Then finally, you can reinforce the outside lines, ghosts and stuff. Use your ruler when you can. Really make this stick out. Now something like that. Well, this is a not so great example, but I hope my process of showing you how I went about it was helpful in some way. I made that a little bit too close together, which made it really overwhelming in how dark it is. But yeah, that's how you do the final lesson. I hope this helped you in even a small way. It's not the best, but basically this lesson just builds upon all the other lessons. So as long as you can do those other lessons, you know, as long as you did them, you're set up well to at least do some pretty simple stuff in this. And don't expect to be able to do crazy detailed stuff at first. By all means try to do it, but do not expect to be able to pull it off well, because if you're new, that's not achievable yet. You're well on your way to becoming that, but I'm not there yet, as you can tell from this. I mean, it's very much, just don't get disappointed by it. See this as a learning experience, because that's where you'll find your motivation. Hope this helped you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.